Next up, we have top-down negotiations. Never accept the first offer. We have with us today Director of Training with Williams & Fudge. Please welcome to the stage Greg Ruffino.
Thank you, everyone. So great to be back at Collector Live again. And as Harry mentioned, we're going to talk today about negotiations, top down, and never accepting the first offer. So that's just a couple of categories that exist under the very fun and complex umbrella of negotiating. So they tell me I have 15 minutes. This could be a several-hour masterclass. So we're going to find a couple of goalposts of best practices that we're going to try to target our great collectors out there to focus on. But we want to keep in mind that you often hear negotiations referred to as an art or a science. And I would fully agree with that. There's a lot of complexities that can come into that. You're dealing with potential multiple parties involved that are all trying to get the best situation for them. We're dealing with humans and the nuance and the fun things that involve with conversation and business transactions. So we can't cover all these categories, but we will focus on a couple of best practices to help you get the ball started. This is also something for me, and for a lot of us, this is not something you just learn overnight and you're good to go. You're continuously learning. It's a lifelong pursuit of getting good at negotiations. So you got to start somewhere, and you should always be seeking opportunities to get better at it, because this could have great impact on your life. It's not just about collecting debt. It could be negotiating your next salary offer. It could be about purchasing your next car. It could be about your next home purchase, all these kind of things. Not to mention, we're having little micro negotiations in our mind, in our daily transactions, countless times throughout the day that you probably don't even realize it. So the more that you're open to learning about negotiations and the art and science behind it, the better off and more successful in general life is going to be. So beyond the basics, you know, we're going to hear later from Roger Weiss today. He's always talking about neuro-linguistic programming and Jedi mind tricks. And that's like next level stuff that you can pursue. Mary Shores comes to my mind as well. She's always got words that work in her power statements. And these are things, too, that you can bring into the fold. But today we'll kind of start with the basic collection conversation and where we get to a point where they might make us an offer that we might not be ready to accept. In addition, you get a lot of conflicting information sometimes out there, right? In complex situations or topics like negotiations. Even in my own research, I was YouTubing, and this guy from Harvard says one thing, and this guy, Gordon Beck, over here in the collection world says another thing. And somewhere there's a truth in the middle. But we have to understand that it depends. You got to understand, where are we? Are we the buyer in this situation, or are we the seller? Where am I in this negotiation? What side of the aisle am I on? And that's where you might get different conflicting best practices, like should I make the first offer or should they make the first offer? It really kind of depends, right? If you are in a salary negotiation, be very careful if you make the first offer, if you're the employee. But here in collections, that's going to be our focus today, right? And here's a great thing to keep in perspective, right? We have the general definition of negotiation is coming to a mutual agreement where all parties involved are appeased with the outcome, right? And think about this. It is potential in collections that it is a 4 versus 1 situation. Potentially, right? You have the client or the original creditor. This entity owns or originated the debt. They might have stipulations. They might have things like we don't accept settlements or we want payments in certain time frames. That's one party. Then you have the agency side, the actual agency, the ownership, right? The ownership of the agency. They might have their wishes and their demands as well. You also have collection management, your team leads and supervisors. Maybe they're motivated or incentivized with certain things as well. So they're on that side of the aisle. And then, of course, there's the collector. You, the one that's out there actually engaged in the trench, making that conversation happen. So all 4 of those potential parties are on one side of an aisle. You are all looking for payment, getting the situation resolved, versus the one person, the consumer. So we do have to keep in mind that we, on the collection side, should be viewing ourselves as in the position of authority, the position of expertise, and in the power position, so to speak. Now, at the end of the day, we ultimately need the consumer to pay the bill, and more often than not, it is a voluntary payment that they're giving us more often than not. So we do need to keep that in mind from the power statement side of things. But it's typical for a consumer to say, hey, there's 4 parties involved here that are going against one party, and somehow in this mix, all parties need to be appeased. So how do we come out of negotiations and making this happen, right? So just keeping that kind of perspective in mind. And before I move on to the best practices and some guidebook kind of things, this is a great lesson for all of us in life, not just in business. And I just heard Gordon say it. If you don't ask, you will never get. Now, that's not my statement, but I picked it up from this author one time, and I thought it was pretty cool. If you don't ask for something in life, you should never expect to get it. And that is going to be true in all business transactions. If you want the most out of something and you're just hoping the person gives it to you, but you don't talk about it, you don't ask about it, you should never expect it. If you're hoping to make more money at work and you don't talk to your boss about those opportunities, you should never expect that to happen. If you want to pay less for a car and you don't ask to pay less for a car, you should never expect that to happen. So be mindful that you have power and control in your life to ask for something that you want and then properly explain why you want that, why you need that, and the benefits of that, and that's negotiations and that's sales. So let's move on then to some of the best practices, right? And so we're going to keep in mind, again, some more perspective is that even though we give best practices, there's no one size that fits all, right? We're dealing with humans, we're dealing with multiple parties that are trying to be appeased, and we're trying to come to a common ground. And sometimes, if you were told that this was the best practice, it might not work in that situation. So I'm always ready to be flexible. I'm always readily available to be creative with that individual, to step outside the goalpost. At the end of the day, we're really just trying to make a deal and get some sort of forward movement, progress payment on the account. And keeping in mind here, so I'm wearing my favorite sales jacket today. This is my car sales jacket. It was $5 at Goodwill many years ago, and one of my favorite jackets next to my money jacket. But this jacket puts me in the state of mind that says I'm a used car salesman. I'm ready to wheel and deal. I'm here to negotiate with you. And as a collector, you kind of have that state of mind as well. When you come into the job, you have to say to yourself, I expect to have conflict in conversation. I expect to have to explain things to consumers. I expect to enter into negotiations many times throughout the day. So when that actually happens, you are not surprised. You're not shocked. You're not caught off guard. I expect every consumer to need me to explain the debt. I expect every consumer to need some sort of a negotiation to get into payment. Now, we all know that sometimes there's wonderful transactions where they call us and they say, hey, I got this beautiful model validation notice from you that really clearly explains my debt, and I can't just help but feel compelled to pay it all today. And they call you, and boom, it's just a transaction. And hey, I'll take that all day. I don't need to be a month-end collector, Gordon, with that kind of transaction. Give me the payment. Those are easy, right? Or you make the call, and they pick up, and they say, I'm so happy you called me today. Here's my Visa. Yes, that sometimes happens, but I can't expect that. I take that as an awesome win. I expect resistance. I expect negotiation at every call, and that way I am moving forward and being very, very prepared. Another thing to keep in mind, too, is appeasing all the parties is things that should not be a shock to you is you should have a general mind frame, whether you're brand new in learning or you're tenured and you've been doing it a long time. Who are your clients and what are their general wants? Are they giving certain time frames of payments? If you're working a lot of similar balances, if you see a lot of $5,000 and $1,000 accounts, you should kind of have a general understanding of where that payment should end up going, or you should have a general understanding of the client. They accept settlements, they don't accept settlements. They have no time frames on payments, they want 6 months. So that way, when you're working your accounts, it's not a scramble to try to figure these things out, right? When the consumer is in the moment, and as we know, they could hang up at any moment, and I need to keep them engaged and interested, I need to make sure I am set up for success. So whatever software you're using, collection software, your CRMs, make sure you know that you're setting it up so your notes are right there in front of you. So when that account loads, you can see exactly what payment and settlement policies are. You should have payment tool calculators available to you, not just your standard desktop calculators. You should have something on your computer. And collection management out there, if you're not providing this to your staff, you need to change that today. Collectors, if you don't have these tools, change that today. Talk to your folks. Easy things you can get for free online where I can plug in a number in an Excel spreadsheet and boom, it spits out a whole bunch of numbers. So I'm not tripping myself up, right? I'm setting myself up for success. Before negotiations even start, I have all my tools there in front of me, right? And I just heard this already with Gordon. In this position as well, just setting ourselves up for success. I believe I'm getting into a lot of interviewing now, bringing on candidates, doing a lot of onboarding. And I would love to add into our job description something that says, I accept that I will hear the word no, and I'm perfectly cool with it, and it won't ruin my day. Sign and agree, your new employee. We have to be very cool and comfortable and expecting in the world of collections and sales that no is just a part of the transaction. Sometimes you're going to hear the word no matter how good of a job you did, no matter how well you negotiated, and it doesn't matter. You know that that is just a process and that we're in a numbers game. So just keeping some things into perspective. So now that we got that settled in 9 minutes, let's move on to the conversation, okay? Where the actual magic happens, where the negotiation will take place. And I've often seen it trained all over the country. I've often heard it said. I hear this in the rows, and it's very common. You hear the collector get on the phone. Consumer answers, of course we do. We verify, is this Mrs. Jones? Yes, it is. We give the mini Miranda, and then I say, hi, this is Greg calling from this agency on behalf of this client. They are seeking payment in full. We take check, debit, or credit. How would you like to pay today? And that's it. But they say it very fast. They say it very forceful. The tone is not necessarily anything worth noting. And the consumer just goes like, what the heck just happened? And all they heard from me is saying, we have a balance in full and we're expecting you to pay that all today. Now, the one thing there that typically happens is that psychological pause. So you make the statement, here's what we're looking for, and we're looking for you to pay in full. That's all the consumer hears. We could very easily lose that consumer right there in that moment. This agency, this collector, all they want is payment in full, and that's all their expectations are. And if the situation is that there's no way that they're going to make that happen, that call either they could hang up on you right then and there, or they just mentally lose you, right? So I think the very opening is critical, how you set the table, right? And a part of it is how you say things, your actual tone, your volume, your speed, and your explanation. So another way of looking at it is identify the consumer and I verify them. Thank you for your time today, Mrs. Jones. Speaking of, I just heard Gordon again say this, using the two words, I need. I only need a few moments of your time today to discuss this matter with my client who's placed this balance in our office. We are definitely seeking this to be paid in full. However, I do want you to know straight away that we are here to discuss several options with you. Now, Mrs. Jones, let me quickly start out with your ability to pay that balance in full, because our goal is here to help you and help you get out of collections as soon as possible. And then from there, at that point in time, I need them to respond. So I know there's lots of different ways I could have said that on stage here, or I could have broke that down in a different way, but I'm letting them know off the bat that we are starting high because we are in the position that says this balance is rightfully owed. You're not just coming into my shop to randomly purchase something that you have no obligation to buy. You do have an obligation here. So I will let them know we do want payment in full because we're here to help you get out of collections as soon as possible. However, before I lose you, if that's not achievable, we will absolutely discuss multiple different payment options and arrangements with you. But let's start at the top with payment in full to get you out of collections as fast as possible. What's your position on that? And of course, we can all argue, debate the exact specific words if we're writing a script, but that's the general concept. And from there, it's incredibly important that we let them now talk, right? I probably just said a whole mouthful in that opening statement, but we know in this job in sales and collections, and even interviewing somebody, we should be actually using 2 ears and 1 mouth, so double the talking or double the listening, than our talking. We told them what we need and we told them what we want. We will be appeased. And the thing that you should keep in mind is resolving it in full. Doesn't always mean payment in full today, full balance. Resolving in full could be a payment in full today, tomorrow, next week. It could be a settlement in full. It could be making a great down payment in monthlies or just regular monthlies. At the end of the day, when the last payment's made, our client is appeased because it was in full. And there's lots of options that we can do to get that sorted out with them, right? But I want them to talk now. And at this point, hopefully they make an offer back, right? They either accept my offer of payment in full, you don't get what you don't ask for, or they make a counter offer. And as the title of this suggests is never accept their first offer. Now, here's the reality. Sometimes the first offer is awesome, and you should accept it, right? $1,500, Mr. Greg, there's no way I can pay you $1,500 today, but I can give you $500 for the next 3 months. If that's their first offer, then the title of this speech doesn't matter. Yes, Mrs. Jones, that's a great offer. Anyone would happily take 3 months at $500. But if they don't make a very good offer, a very low offer, $1,500, Mrs. Jones, $25 a month, my payment calculator says it's going to take, you do the math, I don't have a calculator ready, X number of years to pay it off, that might not be acceptable. What I don't want to do, this is a very important lesson, I don't want to insult them or insult their offer. I don't want to say, no, that's not good enough. That is very important. But when that offer is not good enough, I'm going to say, thank you so much for making that offer. Because we have already won so many battles already. We've located them, They picked up the phone and verified. They let me tell them what we're looking to do. And they didn't dispute. They didn't hang up. We've already won 3 or 4 battles right there. They made an offer of money. I don't care how low it was, if it was $5. I am thankful and I'm happy. I thank you for your offer. Now, let me ask you a couple of questions. So when they make a low offer, I thank them. Or if they make no offer, I still thank them. Well, thank you for still talking with me today. I understand your position. Mary Shorts, she just walked in. 2 most important words. I understand. There you go. I understand your position, but let me just ask you again, Mrs. Jones, I just need a few more minutes of your time. Let me ask you a few questions so I can understand your position, and then from there I can come back and make a counter offer to your offer. And that is, again, even if they're making no offer. I can't afford, I can't pay. I'm still going to entertain numbers with them that might work out, okay? But again, I am never insulting their low offer, and I'm always thanking them. All right, asking these fact-finding questions. Are you employed? How often do you get paid? Who's helping you in your life? What kind of time frames do you need, right? Sometimes someone's like, I know this is credit reporting, and I'm trying to buy a house in 5 or 6 months, and I know they're going to look at my credit, and this is going to affect me, so I really need this paid off in 5 or 6 months. Those things are important, and we need to understand in negotiations what their situation is. And if I'm not asking these questions, and I'm making general assumptions, then I'm not doing a good job, and we're not going to appease all parties, right? So I'm asking a lot of questions, letting them talk. In addition, anytime I come back with counter offers, settlements, or certain payment arrangements, I want to make sure I'm explaining the why behind my number. The reason I'm offering this amount of money is because that way you're out of collections in 6 months. Something to that effect. So I don't just drop random numbers that I think are good. I'll drop numbers using my payment calculators based on their intel that they gave me, based on their life needs, and based on things that make sense to my parties as well. Along the way, as I'm getting really good with it, I'm using my neuro-linguistic programming words. I'm using my Jedi mind tricks. I'm using my words that work. I am being inclusive. I'm using we, us, let's. I am here to help you. We are here to help you. Encouraging them that we are not just going for their last dollar. We are here to work with them. At the end of the day, we all want payment in full, but what really matters is forward positive progress on that account. We know that when someone starts to make any kind of payment on that account, the odds of them actually finishing and paying that off is greatly higher than someone that ends the call today never setting up any kind of payment because we said it was just simply too low. All right, as I'm going to wrap this up here, at the end of the day, again, they make that initial offer. It's either really good and I take it, or I come back with counter offers, letting them express what's happening in their life using that intelligence. At the end of the day, we all want a one-call resolution. Any kind of thing I can do today to get payment on the account, moving it forward, helps that person get committed to that process. So we should be of the mindset, and this, I picked up the phone for the first time 12 years ago, and you never would have heard this 12 years ago. But today, I believe it's changed where we should be okay with taking a small temporary payment arrangement or amount today just to get the ball rolling forward. And again, that might not be the ideal negotiation, but it was better than 0 10 minutes ago. So again, we are here to appease all parties, and if the consumer is not in a good spot, as Gordon just said, these end-of-month collectors and payments that bounce at the end of the month, it doesn't matter if the consumer can't make the payment that doesn't cash at the end of the month. It doesn't appease all parties involved. So if we can't get a one-call resolution, that's okay. We are then setting the table for future calls. And we can let them know, I understand that we couldn't come to an agreement today, but as Kelly just said, was this call helpful for you today? Let's give you a week. Let's cool off for a week. We'll come back to the table. And making sure that you, the collector, part of your job that's so important is making excellent, clear, accurate notes on file. So either you or the next collector that sees that file can pick right up where those negotiations left off. And if you're not doing that, we're not going to appease all parties. So I hope this helped you a little bit, setting your goalpost, remembering some best practices, have fun with the humans out there. Don't be afraid to get some self-practicing. Go to some yard sales on the weekend. Go pretend like you're going to buy a used car, meet a guy like me. Do some wheeling and dealing. And folks, let's get paid. Cheers and thanks.